What a panel. This is awesome. Everybody all set? Ladies, I would like to start with you. You have an amazing story. First, how did you, they do, right? But how did you
come up with... Do you want to ask us about name?
Pardon me?
Name?
Nadya and Masha, right?
Pussy Riot. Pussy Riot.
Pussy Riot, yes.
What's up with the name?
Yeah, well, yeah, did you guys start off as like pussy demonstrators first, or pussy nonviolent marchers? How did you come up with that?
It's the most obvious name which you can choose.
It's very obvious.
It's very obvious.
Both words.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the whole riot situation part. Did you guys see yourselves as a group from the beginning that you were going to be an activist group, or did you just start off as you just were playing music and people didn't like what you were doing, or what was going on?
We just wanted to boy and girls love us. And we have a lot of boys and girls. No, really, you can't separate art and politics, especially if you are living in Russia.
Because in Russia, classical politics is impossible way. You should be creative, or you should go out.
And tell us exactly, tell us the sequence of events of what happened when you were first arrested.
What happened with us?
Yes. What were you trying to accomplish in that moment? I mean, you guys knew you were in Russia, right?
Yes. I can't remember my first arrest.
Were you frightened?
You mean when,
no, it's
when
not
they arrested
frightening
us?
at all. It's interesting. It's like journey. It's like trip. You can speak with people. You can
Okay.
You can ask them about politics, and sometimes they answer very interesting stuff. For example, they are against Putin and they want to fuck him, or kind of like that. But they can't do it, and they want us to do it instead of them.
Actually, people afraid of prison because they don't know what's inside. And of course, if you first time go there and they tell you put off all your clothes and just do different things, you are shocked. But after that, you understand that they're working people like you, and they are some of them believes in the things you believe. So, and you can speak with them, and they can do.
And could you feel that you were getting support while you were in prison? Were you aware of the support that you were getting?
Publicly, no, but unpublicly in 100%.
And if you go to prison, it's very important to be sure that you are not sick. And we have here one person who would know about that even more than we, because he works even in Russia with the Russian prison medical system, and it's really bad. And if you go into prison and you are sick, you can probably even be dead, because there is no medicine at all. It's bad side of prison.
It's the main problem of prison, and that's why we opened an NGO, and that's why we now working on conditions of Russian prisons.
Sure, and that's yeah. Did you want to blab that? You're doing a lot of work with the Russian prison system. What is your main goal right now? What are you trying to accomplish? Is it about free speech? Is it about just conditions in Russia, in prisons? What are you trying to do right now?
Take Putin away. Actually.
As usual, as we mentioned before, we are very obvious and even boring persons. Our goal is only one.
Very simple.
Very simple. And do you feel that you represent a lot of the youth in Russia right now? Are you where Russia, is that where Russia's going, or do you feel like Russia's going back? Because I'm very concerned. This whole thing that happened with Boris Nemtsov a couple of weeks ago is very disconcerting. I'm scared for people like you, and I'm very I admire your courage to do these sorts of things. But where's Russia headed right now? This forward or backwards?
When you speak about Russia, you mention Russian politicians, and it's wrong. You should see people, and you should hear them.
So there's hope.
Definitely it is.
Of course, there is a hope, and we've been at demonstrations which were dedicated to Boris Nemtsov death and funeral of Boris Nemtsov, and you should see that people. You should see their eyes. There is a lot of sad things in their eyes, but as well, there is a hope.
Paul, I want to ask you, tell me about PIH and some of the work you guys have been doing about your organization.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll start by saying that.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm faking everybody out with my lavalier.
Partners in Health, actually, we've worked a lot in Russian prisons on the very issue that was mentioned, which is health condition of prisoners. But not just in Russia, in Rwanda, in Haiti, in Peru. One of my colleagues, Sonia Shin, a physician who was a former student of mine, spent years in Tomsk. In fact, I understand there are people from Tomsk here. Could that be true? That would make me very happy. There's a very old university there. But what we do is to say that there are various kinds of rights. There are political rights and civil rights, but there's also social and economic rights, like the right not to die when you're sick because you're poor. That's really what Partners in Health does. And because there is a tight link between racism, poverty, just look at our own country, which we really need to, to do very carefully when we're talking about prisons, as you said backstage. Once someone is in prison, they're in prison ostensibly as punishment, not for punishment. And so punishing medical conditions or an absence of what you need when people are sick is an extra violation of rights. Now, our own experience in Tomsk, in the prison system, was very positive because, as was just pointed out, there are employees in there. I work mostly with the doctors, of course, who really were horrified. This is in the 90s. Actually, it's partly Hillary Clinton's fault that I ended up there. Because I was looking for money for some work we were doing in Peru, and then ended up in Siberia. Not the way you did, but, to be a doctor. That's my area of medical interest.
I
in any
understand
case,
that you're not a performance artist.
I'm not a performance artist, and I don't think I'd look good in those glasses. But what we did was to say we need better labs and the right medicines to understand why a quarter of all the prisoners here in this prison on therapy are dying of tuberculosis. And the answer was because it was multi-drug resistant tuberculosis. And you need labs and you need the right medicines. Like with Ebola, you need staff, stuff, space, systems. And I've got to say that in Tomsk, mortality went in 1 year from 24% to 0 and stayed flat for almost a decade. So it works when you can find the right people.
And the president talked about the cooperation between public and private, different forces coming together. How important is that in the global health world?
Well, I mean, an American citizen can't get into a Russian prison as a doctor unless you're working with the public sector.
I don't know if we want to get into a Russian prison.
Well, that's just it. There's, like I said, there's only one way you want to go into prison. And the same is true in the United States, right? There are NGOs that work with prisoners on prison conditions. In fact, for CGIU, if I could make a plug, it would be for a Partners in Health board member named Brian Stevenson, who has just written, awesome guy, who has just written a book called Just Mercy. I think if I could make any requests of the students here from all over the world, read that book, Just Mercy, because it talks about the death row prisoners in the American South especially, and they're mostly black, and we have everywhere in the world where you have overcrowded prisons, you have health problems. And that's an NGO equal justice initiative, mostly lawyers instead of, as our case, we're mostly doctors and nurses. They have to learn how to work with the public sector, even if often in oppositional stance, in order to improve things for people. And in Tomsk, you know, I heard what Chelsea said, don't mistake progress for success. Like, there's still a lot of problems with prisons everywhere and in Russia, but look what could happen if you bring an NGO together with a group of like-minded people within a government, even in the least likely place. You can save or at least improve lives. So I'm a true believer in this.
Mr. President,
and I'm glad that the last thing I want to say, I'm glad that the Clinton Foundation is getting money from the public sector. That's what we call it at Partners in Health. Like, we think that governments should invest in healthcare and education.
Great. And Mr. President, I want to ask you, how do we make sure these types of issues stay nonpartisan? I feel that's very important. I hate when it gets mixed into politics. And even, what is the challenge also of trying to do this work and dealing with governments that may either be hostile governments or difficult governments? Well, what are those? Tell me about those two challenges.
Well, the first one's sort of easy. It's interesting today. I talked to a guy this morning and lives in the middle of the country. He's a big Republican. I've known him for 20 years. And a friend of mine said, I talked to this guy the other day, and you should call him. He wants to help you. He believes in what the foundation does. Because we try to basically say we want to do things faster, better, at lower cost than it's being done now. We want to fill a blank in the society in America or around the world. And I think that, you know, if you start with the end in mind, and you say you want to live people's lives and give everybody equal opportunity, and you want to do it in a faster, better, if possible, less costly way, it's easier for people to be for that than if you have to bring them up and say, here are two people running against each other, and this one says X and the other says Y. Sometimes in a highly political atmosphere, you can't even think about X and Y because you've already made your decision. So I start with the end in mind and the people first and work back.
That has to be the agenda, not the politics.
And that's the way politics ought to work too. But I mean, if you start with the end in mind of the people, it's easier. On the government, it's not always easy because our foundation won't go any place to actually work if the national government's hostile to it. Neither will we stay any place if any of our operations have to participate in corruption. That I don't think we should only go into countries where we're sure they're 100% corruption free.
Good luck.
But we should say, if you're dealing with health, with the education of children, with the integrity of a microcredit loan to a woman who's never been able to earn a regular income before, our operations have to be corruption free. And we have walked away from a place or two because of that. And I think once you say that, we want the government to welcome us because we don't want our people to be in any more danger than they already are. And we want to be corruption free. And sometimes you get to operate in the most amazing places. Chelsea went to Nigeria a couple of years ago to kick off this effort we were making to help them and others save 1 million lives of kids who die from diarrhea and other waterborne diseases. And you can do it for 50 cents a kid for oral rehydration therapy and zinc. And the poorest part of Nigeria is where Boko Haram is very strong.
Absolutely.
And knock on wood, our people have been allowed to work up there trying to save lives.
Now, how does that happen?
Different in different places. I think, I don't want to be cynical, but I think children under 5 they're too young to be enslaved for property values. And they do attract a lot of sympathy. And they know, no matter whether they like us or not, or the government of Nigeria or not, that we're not playing politics. We're just trying to help mothers and fathers save their little kids' lives.
That's great.
And so I'm grateful for that, even though I worry about it. We've only had, in all these years we've been working since I left the White House, in all of our different operations, we've lost 2 people. And one was killed, I believe, by accident in Lesotho, but killed by somebody who meant to shoot at the car, but not to kill her. This was a nurse. And the other was a nurse who was killed in the mall by Al-Shahab in Kenya. So it's not free of risk, but I think if you're careful and you go places and people know that you've got the people come first and you're there to serve them and you're not part of an operation that is aggravating corruption in the country, but instead it's lifting lives, I think nearly all of us can operate nearly anywhere.
Yeah, you would hope so. Nadya, Masha, can you tell me about Media Zona? What is this project that you guys are working on?
It's an independent media outlet which we opened about 5 months ago. We did it because we have really terrible situation with independent media, and especially during last year, our government they closed and crushed a bunch of independent media. So we did it because we believe that the information and independent journalistics is what really is a thing which can really change the situation, because most of the Russians, they don't know about what the government is doing and how Putin making this war and also different things.
Mm-hmm. And have you had some success with it, Nadya? And how do you measure that? Do you get response from it, or?
It's hard to measure success right now, but we think that it's the main thing that we can do now, except of art, because if we want to do some changes in such countries, especially in some countries, Russia, you have to do it in all ways which you can perform. I mean, art, and you should try to be a politician, you should try to be a journalist, and you should try to be a human rights worker. You should be everything, and if you do all these things, you can be successful in the end of the story.
Actually, I have one story. Our Media Zona wrote a monologue of a woman who spent almost 20 years in Russian prison. And she's been there several times, and she's been in the same prison where Nadya was, and when she came out from prison, we just made this interview, and this interview suddenly became very, very popular, and a lot of people wrote us that they want to help to her. They collected clothes, money, and that's all, and sent to her. So that's how it's working and should work.
Sure. Sometimes just the power of hearing someone's voice who's been through that. I mean, we talked about Selma today. During that time as president, you remember, it was the power of seeing those images on television changed a lot of hearts, you know. Let's take a question. I think we have a question on the right side over here.
My question is for Professor Paul Farmer. Professor Farmer, I admire your work a lot. Honestly speaking, you're the kind of physician I want to be. And my question is to you is, you've done a lot of work to strengthen healthcare systems in Haiti and in many developing nations across the globe. I mean, in the wake of the recent Ebola pandemic, and considering your work with partners in health and as a physician, what are some really practical ways that you think young people in the room, young people like myself, can be involved in improving healthcare systems within our own communities?
Thank you. And what's your name?
My name is Shadrach Frimpong.
Thank you very much. Okay. And I'm thrilled that you're interested in being a physician. I can tell you that, so going back to Dr. Clinton, and there's his mother, Chelsea.
Yes.
He said he liked his work in politics, but he loves philanthropy. Well, I love this work, and I think you don't have to be a physician to do it. You don't have to be a clinician to do it. We need everyone to be involved. But just let's go to Ebola for a second. Ebola, it's not a mystery why it's spreading so rapidly in some places and not others. So it would be a mistake for us to think that it's a mystery. It's spreading because there are not health systems in place that can detect and also take care of people, right? Because, you know, when you hear people say, well, there's no treatment for Ebola, that's not true, right? There are always treatments for infections that cause vomiting and diarrhea and shock. We've known that for 100 years. Not me personally, but it has been known. So how do you deliver care like that, which is called in medicine supportive care, without clinics and hospitals? And how, if you're living in a rural area of Sierra Leone or Liberia or Guinea, which is where this started, because it's a zoonosis from animals. I mean, let me tell you, I don't think this is the first time it's happened in West Africa. I don't believe that at all, right? Just do a little research and you'll see that's not true either. How do you, if you're living in a rural area, I work in a lot of rural places. Tomsk is a very rural oblast, most of it is swamp, it's hard to get around. How do you get from point A to point B if you don't have a community health worker, right? Who says, hey, this person's sick, we gotta, or has obstructed labor. We're talking about, maternal mortality. If you're living in a village and you have a problem, you shouldn't be having your baby at home. You should be having a baby in a safe place with transfusion. So let me tell you, I have not seen yet in my short, admittedly brief time in West Africa, any modern medicine, any collision between poor people with Ebola or doctors with Ebola and really modern medicine, unless they left the area and came to the United States or Europe. And that's just wrong, right? What you can do as young people from 80 countries is, you already know this, is if I go to a village in one of these places or meet a survivor, what do you think they say to me? First of all, they're mostly young because that's why they survived. They want to go to university. They want to, like you, they want to go to university. They want the chance to be a business person or a doctor, or, and you can't do that, again, if you don't have, these systems that we take for granted. Russia has universities too, but you won't find many in these places that you were talking about where Ebola is spreading. They not only lack health systems, they lack educational systems that go all the way up to the, to the kind of institutions like the one I'm lucky enough to teach at in Cambridge, Massachusetts. And that, we should have, that's where we should be putting our resources, and you guys can help make it happen.
Great. Have another question?
Hi, my name is Jennifer, and I was wondering, for anyone on the panel, what you think is a question that we should be asking each other in order to facilitate open dialogues?
Mr. President, what is the question we should be asking each other in order to facilitate open dialogues? Is that what you said? So is there a central question we need to ask each other? How about this? How do we take the inspiration from even days like today, seeing artists like this, and turn it into perspiration for people who may not even be as invested as these students? How do we do that? How do we get people active in this fight?
Okay, I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest problem in the world today, in a negative sense, is identity politics, identity economics, identity social politics, where we believe that what is special and unique about us is more important than our common humanity. Many of you do not believe that, or you wouldn't be here. Many of you like who you are and are proud of who you are, but you think what you have in common with people half a world away is more important. Now, if you believe that, then the question you should be asking of each other is, what can you do about it? What can you do about it? Not what can I do about it, not what can Bill Gates do about it, not what can the president do about it or anybody else. What can you do about it? Given what you know about modern technology, given what you know about your network of friends, given what you've seen here, how can you maximize your impact? How can you assume your responsibility? Interestingly enough, as our friends from Russia will tell you, once you do that, even if you don't have to do something as terrible as go to prison, it gives you more power when telling other people who may have more money or more position than you do what they should do. But first, you should be asking each other, what can I do to build a common future in a world where there seem to be so many people determined to divide us even down to death? I think that's the most important thing you can do.
That's great. Nadya and Masha, do you have a message for young people out there who are looking for some kind of sign or you know, it's kind of what she was saying, what do I do? How do I get involved?
Do you mind if we will answer in Russia with translator?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
You want me to translate? Or?
No, it's too much.
I wish I did. I'm ashamed I don't know more languages.
Наверное, мы можем говорить только на своем примере, почему мы стали неравнодушными, почему мы занимаемся, чем мы занимаемся.
I believe we can only give our own example and tell you why we're doing what we're doing.
Мы не отошли от своих взглядов и по-прежнему являемся активистами, несмотря на то, что нас меньшинство, потому что мы верим в то, что если мы можем пожертвовать тем, что у нас есть, во имя чего-то большего, чем являемся мы сами, этой вещью, например, является наша свобода, то мы обязательно победим.
We did not deviate from our opinion, from our point of view. We're still the activists. We're still working towards our main goal, even though right now we're in minority. But what we're working towards is something bigger than we are.
Very good.
И также мне хотелось бы, чтобы мы ценили то, что у нас есть. Очень часто мы забываем о том, как много у нас есть того, чего другие не имеют.
And I would like to remind everyone that we should all appreciate what we have, because very often do we forget that we have more than any other person in the other place does not have.
Great. I would say ask the questions and then be the answers. Simple. That's me, Mr. President. Simple. That's how I do it.
Nadya, also.
Nadya, is there any last words you want to say?
Yes, last supper. When we say about everybody can be Pussy Riot, it doesn't mean that you can put on your own head balaclava. You can, of course, but you don't have to. And you can be just open to world, and world will be open to you. And our cases show to everyone, show that if you are sincere, world will be kind for you, even if you are in prison. And when we've been in prison, we felt that world were very extremely open to us. And I have to say thank to all of you because of that feeling.
Right. Paul, what would be your message?
Well, just really to echo what was said, you know, I'm glad you laid it out like that. I mean, identity politics that lead us to believe that human beings have different value is like the biggest problem that we've seen, that I've seen. And just going to the case of Rwanda, you know, the essentialism of that divide, which was a, you know, fake post-colonial amplification of some fairly socially insignificant differences, right? But the other more powerful thing, or the other, so that's the negative thing. So what's the powerful counter to that? Well, you know, I guess I was very moved to hear you say that you looked in the eyes of some of your jailers and saw, you know, that there were people there too who wanted to do the right thing. And what happened in Rwanda is very powerful, because people said, okay, a lot of people were willing to write off Rwanda as a lost cause, a failed state, hopeless, poorest country in the world, 1 million people killed, mostly Tutsi, right? And if you can bring people together to say, what can we do to make this better? And, you know, what has happened there health-wise and has involved a lot of young people over the last decade has been astounding. What has happened there have been the steepest declines in mortality, in death, ever recorded anywhere in the world at any time. Now, if you could do that in Rwanda, which went all the way to hell only 20 years ago, that meant that you had to attack the idea that some people were better than others, that there were these essential differences. I mean, that's, you know, that our country here is built on the back of problems like that we have to address here, you know. And you know, and I know they're telling you to wrap up, but I'm just saying, as a doctor, when you hear someone say,
"Not the Oscars, go for it."
Well, you know, it's just, it's the negative, and the answer is, well, how can I do to help? But when you hear someone say, "I can't breathe,"
right?
You know that you've got to do the right thing.
That cuts through everything. Very well said. That type of reality, it cuts through everything. And I'd just like to say, I'd like to thank our panel here tonight, Pussy Riot, Paul Farmer, of course, the president. I would like to thank Chelsea and Mrs. Clinton and the president for inviting me here tonight to be a part of this event. And now the president's going to make a closing statement. Thank you very much, everyone.